believe it or not, this is quite a unique review. Today we're actually reviewing a game that was recommended to me a while back. Now, it's not that rare that I get recommendations from my friends or strangers online, but getting around to play them is, for many reasons. Considering that my time, energy and these days budget is very limited, I gotta be selective. On top of that, my taste for games is not really standardized. It depends heavily on my mood and teased curiosity. I guess the most standardized part of my taste for games is them being less standardized, because you can recommend me whatever is popular at the time, but those games tend to not tease any curiosity in me in the slightest. Raincoat definitely did tease my curiosity. In fact, it was very annoying at times that I had to wait to play it. For you see, when this game was recommended, it did not right away sound like a game for me. It's supposed to be a detective story with game mechanics built around solving mysteries, which has a sorta combat debating system around it and some puzzle minigames to uncover these mysteries. Again, considering my portfolio here online, that does not sound like my forte. Yet it was the presentation that intrigued me. It's the studio behind Danganronpa after all, though they also are behind the ReZero game and the wasted potential game that was made in Abyss. So it's safe to say that my hopes were heavily leaning on my mate's recommendation and the presentation that it showed. Based on that, I decided I would wait buying the game until I ran into it at a collector's con or something, where a fair price would be asked for it and I felt comfortable taking the risk. But that, unfortunately, did not really happen, so when the game was on sale on Steam and the price was right, I just decided to dive into it. So now, without further ado, let's see what Raincoat has to offer, and maybe along the way we also find out why my mate enjoyed this game so much and recommended to me. In any case, this is my review of Master Detective Archive's Raincoat. In Raincoat, we go on an adventure with a young boy named Yuma Cocohead. One day he woke up with a serious case of amnesia and all he had to go off of was the uniform he was wearing and a letter explaining what he is and what he needs to do. It turns out he is a trainee detective that works for the World Detective Organization and has been selected together with other detectives to travel to the city of Conaiward, a center of many mysteries like the unending rain that falls on the city and the Amaterasu Corp, which controls everyone and thing in the city itself. And it seems to be working on dangerous experiments that could even threaten the world itself. All these cases are required to be investigated by Yuma and his team. However, as you would expect, such a place does not give away its secrets easily and willingly. On the train ride, it already becomes clear that Conaiward is not a friendly place for outsiders and that strange powers are at work here. However, Yuma's not alone in this fight, because it turns out he made a pact with a death god named Shimagami, whom appeared to Yuma and explains that she will offer him her help and powers to solve any and all mysteries. A strange partnership to be sure, but one that seems to have a chance together with the other detectives to solve the mysteries surrounding Conaiward, Amaterasu and even Yuma himself. Again, to be honest, just like in the opening, on paper it's not really a story or a game that would lure me in directly. But I have watched a fair share of detective series in the past, and Raincoat actually fits perfectly with the aspects that I enjoy of the detective genre. It has a good starting mystery and the build-up and investigation takes a proper amount of time, and the solution and motives are for the most part not too far stretched at all. I was especially wary of the latter one becoming a problem, as detective series in general lose their believability the longer they go on. A fear that also creeped in during my playthrough of Raincoat, as they have a tone of supernatural added on top of it, but they found a clever way out of that. In the world of Raincoat, detectives have a special ability, a forte as it's called. Using these abilities makes investigating a crime scene a lot more interesting, as you can rewind time to a certain degree, or view the scene as it was discovered, or spy on people via disguises. To a degree, you could call this a clever cliché dodge, but in all honesty, the way it was treated felt more like a good pillar in its world building. The abilities have a very noticeable limit that doesn't solve a case instantly. It's not an exploit, it's a tool, and in this world, said tool exists in the eye of everyone, not just the player. This gives solving the mystery their own unique little twist on top of the already interesting premise the mystery itself has. And what's maybe even more interesting, and definitely what hooked me personally, is the fact that the story shines a light on what the ideals of truth versus justice is. In my opinion, it doesn't happen enough where a detective and audience asks what they are really doing when solving a mystery or crime scene. Are they finding the truth or trying to do justice, and what do they do when the truth affects their judgment? Because the truth is, in many situations, cruel, unfair, even hurtful. Is it at that point good to uncover the truth, or is it offering someone blissful ignorance a better alternative? It's a similar question that was asked in Enslaved Odyssey to the West, and one I do love debating and thinking about. Now, Raincoat doesn't delve into it at the same level as Enslaved Odyssey to the West does, but it does elevate an already interesting and fun detective game in something more, and again, hooked me big time once the discussion started. A similar thing also happened with the characters. When they were introduced, they were very on the nose about what kind of stereotype they were based off, and in my opinion, not that interesting. But each character from the detective team is involved with one of your cases, and when you get to know them on a more personal level during those cases, the further they seem to get away from the stereotype and actually add a lot of character to the case itself, and affects the resolves of Yuma during the entire story. Which I initially did not expect to happen, but I did appreciate it a lot and plays into what you should expect of Raincoat in general. At the surface, it seems to do nothing special, but it is able to give its own twist to the things that it does and elevate itself to something greater. But where the game seems to put a good twist on the story, characters and art style, it seemed to struggle a bit with the gameplay. The baseline for the gameplay is actually fine. The game consists of 5 chapters and each of them have a clear divide in what you do in them. First part of each chapter should not be a surprise for a detective game. It's a lot of talking and getting to the stage, so to say, where the mystery presents itself to you. From there you start investigating. This is where you collect information in various ways. Be that by just going over the crime scene collecting the puzzle pieces, or by using one of the fortes of other detectives to obtain different point of views on the situation. Of course, the story moves through these moments as well until you reach a point where you have to step into the mystery labyrinth, which is where the fun begins, but also where the problems arises. The mystery labyrinths are probably my favorite thing of Raincoat. Yes, I do like a good debate and thinking session about ideals and such, but I am just a bigger sucker for clever, fun and interesting visuals that enhance a story. And boy are there many of them here. These labyrinths are places where the mystery gets materialized in all sorts of ways and where the actual answer and solution must be found. This is a special power that comes with the pact Yuma made with Shimigami, and it's also the place where I suspect the devs had the most fun in being creative. Every pun about detectives or going down the rabbit hole and everything in between is made here, but it's not always as simple and direct as that might sound. At times it's very clever about taking on different perspectives or setting a tone for a mystery itself. Yet it does not lose itself in its humor insanity. It actually excels in this aspect, giving a lot of character to each mystery. I guess the only moment that for me didn't work in terms of humor is the over-the-top edginess at times from Shimigami herself. Pretending to kill Yuma constantly and vomiting up evidence keys and such things are just not for me. Yet the other half of her character was, let's say, very interesting in terms of character and, most importantly, visuals. But besides Shimigami's look, the entire game's art style looked just amazing. Kana Ward feels unique and each mystery has its own style and location. But it's the overall atmosphere of Kana Ward that I thought was just awesome. On each street corner there is so much detail, while the city itself, with the never-ending rain, oozes a degree of mystery on its own, setting the tone just right while at the same time kind of felt relaxing and calm. Like it was the silence before a storm, which balanced perfectly with the insanity storm of the mystery library. Those are very colorful and have a weird atmosphere that you would expect from a dungeon that visualizes mysteries and tries to throw you off and stop you from solving it. But again, it's here in the mystery labyrinth where most of the problems of the game arises. In the real world you have collected the evidence, and now via puzzles or mostly just minigames, the game is going to test you if you absorb the information and makes you use it to beat quick-time events, word puzzles, and occasionally debates with mystery phantoms. The last one does have a nice twist to it and is, in my opinion, the most interesting, but also the biggest problem causer for this game. A debate is considered by many to be rather boring, and for a game it's definitely not that interesting of a game mechanic. So Raincoat decided to make it into a reasoning deathmatch, which is as fun as it sounds like. You are fighting a mystery phantom that throws lines and words at you, and you have to cut them away with the sword of truth. And when they truly start saying lies or incorrect information, you slice through it with your own evidence. And when you do this enough times, only the truth remains and you win the deathmatch. I think these deathmatches are a fantastic idea, and again, a clever way to visualize something that would be considered rather boring. Especially the usage of these game mechanics tell the story here at times, even giving me flashbacks to how Undertale does it. But again, it has its problems as well, and I'm not sure what the problem causer is. I suspect it is a language problem at times, but I did struggle in some of these battles. If you slice through the incorrect sentence with the wrong evidence, your attack is so to say rejected, and the encounter resets. But at times, the sentence and evidence lined up in my opinion perfectly, yet because one word should be different in that line, it was rejected. Which, okay, is fine in a certain degree. You can first go through the entire encounter before you decide to even act on them. The lack of patience can be blamed on me, but in other puzzles you don't have the luxury to wait, you have to make choices quickly. There you will sometimes get thrown into a reset because the interpretation is not precisely on point. Because I can guarantee you that not knowing the answer wasn't the issue here. In fact, if you already figured out ahead of the story the how, the what, and the why, it actually works against you. Especially if you deduct something via a different path than the game presents, it can really become a pain. At that point you will get into a situation where the game wants an answer from you that you have not considered and ignored, as there is enough other evidence that delivered the same result in your mind. Now, it's not that big of a deal, I guess, so what, you get resetted to a start of the encounter or have to replay a bit of the game again. It's not that punishing in the sense of a game. Well, the problem lies somewhere else, and in my opinion is a lot bigger. Because it felt like I was getting punished for thinking ahead or past the game, which shouldn't that be kind of the goal in a detective game? Yes, but that is where the problem lies in Raincoat. It's not a detective game in the end. It's a visual novel with puzzles that act like a detective game. When I think of a detective game, I think of games where I could fail because you missed out on some evidence or deducted something wrong. Here in Raincoat, that is impossible to do. The game will force you to have the right answer, because it will only accept the right answer when moving forward. Which is fine if I wasn't fooled to believe by Raincoat that it was more than a visual novel. Once that was understood, things worked a lot better, but it did take the fun away a little bit at times. I noticed that during investigations, I wasn't going over every little thing anymore, as I knew the game wouldn't allow me to progress further if I didn't get the information needed. Getting flawless in a reasoning deathmatch felt kinda pointless, because if you did it wrong, you just try again. Even if you don't know any of the information by trial and error, you will still make it through easily. So in the end, the fun of the game is determined by how much you want to ignore that reality. And on that end, honestly, I was willing to ignore it constantly. Yes, it was annoying at times, especially when I took the liberty of thinking ahead, but I couldn't help myself. The mysteries were fun things to thought over and puzzle out ahead of the game itself. This is not something I could turn off, and again, the so-called punishment for doing this wasn't that high, so screw it. I wanted to figure them out, see the fun story unfold, roam around further in this great looking game and enjoy the atmosphere. Because in the end, it didn't matter if it was a visual novel pretending to be a detective game or a full-fledged detective game. It was just a fun game with a good story, great art style, and that was the only thing that mattered in my opinion. The only thing I wish was that I was warned, or at least remembered if I was warned, that the game is good at pretending to be a detective game. So that the first thing I will slap on my recommendation here is, of course, that Raincoat is a very good visual novel, but a visual novel nonetheless, and it should be treated as such. Its art style is unique and the atmosphere is fantastic. The mysteries are not that over the top or far-fetched, yet have a twist to it that you not see often anywhere else. Yes, it has some gameplay / puzzle aspects, but if you're not good at them or make mistakes, then it's just fine. The ride can be enjoyed no matter what, and just tag along for it is the right attitude to have when buying Raincoat.